Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you, coming at you with a new pack review. We're going to be talking about the End of Guilt, and namely, we're going to be talking about all of the new UR cards that are in it. How good are they? What decks are they used in? And how many copies do you need? So thank you for joining me for this video, and let's not waste any more time and get right on into it. Snake Eyes Vengeance Dragon is the new boss monster for the White Forest and Sinful Spoils archetype. In lore only, if you look at the material requirements and its effect, you will actually not see any archetype specific wording in there, which means this card is totally generic. You could, in theory, use it in anything that could make a level 12 synchro monster. It's got some pretty good disruption effects. I think that overall, you will definitely want a copy of this if you are playing White Forest, and it is somewhat worth considering, but it's also worth noting that Centurion Legatia is another sort of generic level 12 synchro monster that can also disrupt. Now, granted, there are two different effects, right? Snake Eyes Vengeance Dragons puts monsters from the field or graveyard, important to note, in the spell trap zone, and then can destroy cards during the battle phase, whereas Legatia destroys and then draws. Both effects have their strengths and weaknesses. But as far as like being a level 12 synchro dragon monster, you don't want to try to summon this off of like Crimson Dragon, right? There are definitely better targets in that regard. That said, I think especially if you are playing White Forest, but if you play a lot of synchro decks in general that can make level 12, it's worth considering picking up one copy of this card. Azamina is the final boss monster of, as you could probably guess, the Azamina archetype, and can also, of course, work in various White Forest and or Sinful Spoils decks. So the material requirements to fusion summon her, you need Queen Azamina, but you can also summon this from your extra deck by attributing Saint Azamina and one monster your opponent controls. Saint Azamina is a part of a lot of White Forest and Azamina combo lines anyway, and in that regard, this can act as not only a potential upgrade, but also a sort of kaiju effect, getting rid of an opponent's monsters, which is never a bad thing, especially when Lunalight Liger Dancer is running around. That said, when it comes to on-field effects, I actually think Saint Azamina has the slightly stronger effect, preventing your opponent from targeting any of their own cards in their field, graveyard, or banishment, as opposed to this Azamina, which is a sort of tax effect, but only for monsters' attack points, and that it says your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters with 0 attack. That's not just on the field, by the way. That does also count hand and graveyard, which can potentially stop some, hand traps or other effects, but it does require you to still get out your big boss monster. Overall, as an end boss, I think this card is kind of on the weak side. I think most applications of Azamina would be to be used as, like, again, a kaiju type effect if you happen to already control Saint Azamina. From what I can tell in my research, this card seems very optional for Azamina and White Forest decks, so if you pull a copy, you could try it, but if you don't, I wouldn't go out of my way to craft it necessarily. Witch of the White Forest is a new field spell for the White Forest archetype, and arguably the card that White Forest players have been waiting for the most. It is one of those infamous Rhoda field spells, Rhoda of course referring to reinforcement of the army, which refers to the fact that on activation this card can search a White Forest monster from deck to hand. This not only offers the deck more consistency, it actually gives the deck one card combo line, something you didn't necessarily always have access to before, which is really nice. This does come with the caveat that you cannot special summon dark monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn, which will naturally lock you out of Azamina stuff. So if you are beginning your combo with Witch of the White Forest, you cannot do Azamina stuff. That said, there's still plenty of things you can end on, and if you open other White Forest cards, you can still make Azamina stuff, then activate this once you're done doing that. So this card still has a lot of application even in Azamina builds. So I think that this is a definite 3 of for every kind of White Forest build. Again, even if you're not playing, or even if you are playing Azamina, you'd still want a play set of this for sure. The bonus effects are nice. Being able to treat your White Forest monster as a tuner in particular can let you, if you have like a Stellar plus LZ, or just 2 of the level 2s in general, You can treat one of them as a tuner and then synchro into Herald of Arclight, which is kind of cool. It's an Omni-Negate option, or if you're feeling really creative, maybe even a way to bridge into something like Mitsurugi. So the bonus effects are definitely there, and they definitely do have applications, but just being able to search White Forest cards alone makes this a slam dunk 3 of for, I think, every single White Forest build. Diabellstar Vengeance is the new form of, well, naturally Diabellstar, which is a part of the new Sinful Spoils archetype. So naturally it is a consideration for any deck that cares about Sinful Spoils cards, but as a result of that, it's also going to be a one of in the new White Forest build that is utilizing this as an end board piece. This card is actually really cool because by itself, it not only represents the ability to destroy a card with its quick effect, but then you can summon the new Poplar from your extra deck as well and synchro into a level 12 like Snake Eyes Vengeance Dragon. So Diabellstar Vengeance is actually like one card, multiple layered interactions, which is really cool. Which is again why you can potentially consider it for other Sinful Spoils decks as well. But I'm going to mainly focus on White Forest with this, where you definitely want one copy of it for sure, as it will be a very crucial part of your end board. Diabells, the White Witch, is the new form of Diabells and is always treated as a White Forest card. As such, you will be playing it in your White Forest decks moving forward, but you only need the one copy. Because this card, because it's always treated as a White Forest card, is actually searchable by the new field spell. You can also special summon her by sending the new field spell after searching her, which is very convenient. Furthering the convenience, once you summon her, you can then send a Sinful Spoils or Diabell cards from your deck to the graveyard. So, in the new White Forest combo line, this is how you get access to Diabellstar Vengeance, and a lot of the time, that is what this card's role will be. It's kind of cool that you could potentially send other Sinful Spoils cards, and there might be some niche applications if you really want to merge, like, Snake Eyes with White Forest, right? And, you know, you could mill the OSS and go into plays that way. But for the most part, it's just going to be used as part of your White Forest combo. You only need one copy for White Forest, though, so just look for the one. Psychic Blaster Mark II is the boss monster of the new wave of banished psychic monsters. It's not generic. It does require you to use both a psychic tuner and psychic non-tuners, but it does have a couple of neat effects that interact with the banish. Again, banished psychic being a thing. From what I can tell in my research, the banished psychic archetype that is supported by this wave of, well, support, is not quite enough to cause it to bust out into the competitive scene. These cards are really cool. Ever since they very first came out all the way back in Duelist Genesis, I've always really liked the banished psychic cards, but this wave of support is actually much like that wave was way back in the day, where these effects are cool, but they're just not really enough to, you know, keep up with what's being played competitively. I don't see this deck being much higher than like lower rogue at best, so I think that all in all, if you're not looking to play specifically the banished psychic deck for fun, you can pretty much just avoid this. It is an option in Punk. You could consider this for the extra deck, but it is extremely optional in that regard. Axon Kicker Oracle is a fusion boss monster for the Banish Psychic archetype, which is typically a synchro archetype, but does also have a little bit of fusion support as well. It's got a pretty nice quick effect, being able to stop special summons, and if it's sent to the graveyard for any reason, even being used as like a link summon, you can banish a teleport spell and revive it right away. That said, I really don't think the Banished Psychic archetype is honestly going to be that powerful. I think that overall its power level is going to be lower rogue. If you are going to end up playing that deck, I think it could be worth picking up a copy of this card, and as always, there is some potential, you know, application blending this archetype with other psychic decks like Punk. But that said, you know, to have to fusion summon this card, you can't cheat out. You have to use like a spell card to fusion summon it, and they do get a new fusion spell in the form of a new teleport card. But I really don't think that all of this combined is going to be enough to make Banished Psychic a tiered deck. It's really interesting, and if you happen to pull a copy of this and want to check the deck out, definitely hang on to it, but definitely don't go out of your way to make it. Mind Procedure is another new psychic monster for the banished psychic archetype. Although to be fair, this one doesn't have to necessarily only be used in the banished deck, like the other extra deck monsters are going to be at their best. You could think about using Mind Procedure in just about any psychic-based deck, because on normal summon, by paying 2,000 life points, this can add emergency teleport from deck to hand. So if you're playing Punk, for example, you could normal summon this, add E-Tele, go into Xayamine, and then do your full Punk combo. So I think more than the other psychic stuff, you can consider Mind Procedure for just about any deck that wants to utilize emergency teleport and psychic monsters. Of course, even if you don't get your engine going, you could always E-Tele for a Ghost Ogre as well. That said, I do think it is still really optional because it will use your normal summon and you have to pay 2,000 life points. So like, yeah, it is a way to get into emergency teleport, which is a starter for a lot of plays, but it's not the most reliable one, again, in terms of needing to use your normal summon, and then it could very easily get negated on normal summon, and then, well, you can't make plays. So, while I think it might be worth hanging on to any copies you happen to pull if you're interested in playing various psychic decks, in the long run, I don't think you necessarily need Mind Procedure if you're already playing a deck, you know, like Punk or something. If you're playing Banished Psychics, you'll definitely want a playset of this, but for psychic decks in general, I would consider up to a playset being very optional. Fallen Angel of the Golden Land is a new support card for Eldritch. It's a new fusion monster, which can be fusion summoned with Eldritch Golden Lord plus a zombie monster, or, and as you'll probably be summoning this, you can simply tribute a light zombie monster while you have Eldritch the Golden Lord on your field or in your graveyard. So pretty easy to summon this. You could even just get rid of one of the trap cards that's being treated as a monster in order to play this, and then when it does get sent from the field to the graveyard, you can then summon another Eldritch monster from your deck, extra deck, or graveyard. So it could even get the other Eldritch fusion monster, which is pretty cool. Also doesn't care how it is sent from the field to the graveyard, so you can even do something as simple as linking this off, right? Which again, I think is pretty strong and definitely worth taking a look at. That said, if you look at back row decks in general, they've all power crept Eldritch pretty badly at this point, and while this card is strong, I don't think it alone is nearly enough to make Eldritch a competitive deck to where it was when Master Duel first came out. Those of you who weren't playing Master Duel when it very first dropped might be surprised to know that Eldritch, with the help of maybe a few floodgates, was actually one of the tier 1 decks of that format. But nowadays, I would say that Eldritch is like somewhere in Rogue, upper or lower. You can make an argument for either, but while this support is a nice power buff, I don't see it granting Eldritch a ranking any higher than upper Rogue at best, which is where I'll put it for now. And again, this card is really good for Eldritch decks, don't get me wrong. It's just that, again, the main issue is that Eldritch decks in general aren't super great. Not as good as they used to be, for sure. But if you are going to play Eldritch, you definitely want to play 1 or 2 copies of this in your deck. Elixir of the Glorious Golden Land is a new trap card for the Eldritch archetype, and it's a really, really solid one. It does a lot of things that Eldritch trap cards really needed to do in order to help the deck. First of which is it has the ability to potentially bounce a monster if you activate this and summon it as a monster card while you control Eldritch, which obviously you'll be doing most of the time you're playing an Eldritch deck. So not only is it some much needed removal, but it's also recycling, allowing you to set one of your banished Golden Land or Elixir spell or trap cards. You know, Eldritch, of course, being a back row deck, is often going to be out playing the grind game. So having a card that can let you cycle your banished, you know, Golden Land and Elixir cards to play that grind game so much more efficiently is very much needed. This is definitely one of those waves of support, though, that is keeping Eldritch up with the rest of the meta, but not really changing its position, right? Eldritch was, well, honestly, it used to be a tier 1 deck way back in the day, but a few years ago. But now I would consider it more of an upper rogue deck that's like sliding into lower rogue territory, and this new support will help prop it back up into upper rogue, but I don't think it'll make Eldritch a tiered deck. That said, if you are playing Eldritch, I would definitely consider, like, at the bare minimum, 1 copy of this, but maybe even 2. I don't think you need a full playset, because, you know, this is going to be recycling a lot of your cards and enabling plays in and of itself, but I think 1 or 2 would be good for Eldritch decks for sure. Trapaholic is a new card to just support trap card decks in general. I was actually kind of surprised to see this being a UR, because we've seen other cards that have similar effects. Think Trap Trick and Trap Tracks, and those have all been SR. Now, what this card has as advantage over those other two is that those other two cards say that you can't activate any more trap cards the turn you use them, whereas Trapaholic does not have that condition, right? Also, Trap Tracks requires you to destroy your own monster, and Trap Trick requires you to banish another copy of that card from the deck to use it, right? So, in theory, this card requiring you to destroy a spell or trap card you control is, in a lot of situations, an easier condition to fulfill. What isn't always as easy is the secondary condition. You can only activate the card you set if you have 3 or more trap cards in your graveyard. That's not a condition that the Trap Tricks or Trap Tracks have. So, is this card actually worth picking up? From what I could tell in my research, the answer is generally speaking no. The only decks that I could really find that were actually using this were some builds of Dinomorphia, and even then it was not a lot of them. So I think this card, even if you're playing a deck like Labyrinth or Trap Tricks, I think is actually quite skippable, especially because it is a UR and there are budget SR options. Now, if you happen to pull some copies of this card, then you could consider trying it out. And again, like I said, it does have some pros and cons as opposed to those other examples, but not only do I think the other two cards are cheaper to make, but I actually think that they're in general slightly better. I think if you're looking to activate a trap card directly from your deck, Trap Tricks is probably still the way to go. So, I don't know. I'm going to put this, I guess, 0 to 3. It's going to be kind of one of those weird ones, because, again, if you happen to pull it, you could try it out, and I'm not saying it'll be bad or, even worse than pre-existing options, just different, but very optional even if you are playing a deck, like Labyrinth. And there is my review for the new pack, The End of Guilt. Now, as far as is this pack overall worth crafting, I think kind of as always as ever, it's going to be a bit of a, how interested are you in the archetypes? But I think that's going to apply to this pack a lot more than others. I don't think any of these cards are going to be like meta defining. I think mostly if you're interested in White Forest, this pack is worth pulling for, but if you're not interested in White Forest or the Sinful Spoils archetype at all, I would consider holding off on it. I don't think the Banished Psychic support or the Eldritch stuff is going to be high impact enough to overall be worth playing unless you are interested in those archetypes individually. But that's going to be my review overall. Thanks for joining me, as always, and let's go ahead and move now to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.